What's up, everyone? Long time no see. My name is Kai. Welcome to my YouTube channel. So, in today's video, we'll be giving a little bit of an update as to where I am in this process of trying to become an adventure photographer. In addition, I've started my little own Substack where I'll be talking about just my thoughts, journaling a bit here and there, and sharing this with the public. Um, so, yeah, let's get into it. So, it's currently September 4th, 2025, and I am actually leaving for Nepal on September 14th at around, I think, 5 p.m. Eastern time. And I'll be going from JFK to Kuwait Airways, 1 hour layover in Kuwait, and then we'll be landing in Kathmandu, I believe, on September 15th or 16th. I'm currently pretty nervous, and I've spent the past few weeks really trying to hang out with my friends and family, being with my mom and dad, and training a little bit physically for this journey, but also I've just been trying to have fun, just trying to relax because I don't know when I'll be back to America. I've still only booked a one-way ticket. I haven't booked a return flight yet, and I've just been just doing the stuff that I love, like poker, chess. I've been playing a lot of Catan actually, so if we were to go into Catan, I play Catan on colonist.io, and I've been playing so much that I've played how many games this season? I've played 374 games this season, and the season started, I think, about a month ago. So I've been averaging about 10 games a day. Currently 52nd in Pennsylvania. I was almost top 1,000 in the United States, but I've fallen from my all-time high. Um, with regards to my preparation for Nepal, physically I feel good. My cardio is not amazing, but that shouldn't be that big of a deal. Another concern that I have is like my language. I've done honestly minimal language preparation for Nepal. I've learned a little bit of Nepali here and there, but it's just been so difficult. And from what I know, Nepali is very similar to Hindi in the way that it's the same alphabet, it's the same written language. Um, an analogy to Nepali and Hindi is comparing British English and American English. So the underlying language is very much the same, but the way that you speak it is very different, and maybe the grammar changes here and there. Um, I've been talking to a few people in Nepal. I've figured out my emergency exit plans. I have emergency contacts, and I have figured out my lodging. So I think in terms of just sustaining myself out there and living out there, I'm fine. That's good. I think that with regards to my financial standing, I have some savings that I can allot to living in Nepal for a bit. I believe that I can live here for about 6 months, and then from there on out, I'll have to figure out my financial situation. I'm not too worried about going broke yet. This is really good news actually, just because I haven't really worked a job in a while, but I have made an absolute killing on the stock in the stock market, just trading IPOs, trading meme stocks, stuff like that. So that's been really good. Uh, and yeah, I've just been. This is kind of crazy. Like it's really starting to set in. I have 10 days till Nepal. 10 days, and then I am going to be living in a random hotel in Kathmandu. Gonna try make it big somehow. And if I don't make it big, it's fine. Um, if I don't make it big, it's fine. At least I went on a gap year, and that gap year was pretty exciting. I did what I wanted to do. I did photography. I had a lot of fun. That is a good thing. And I think that the ceiling for all the opportunities here is literally infinite. I can do whatever I want. I can meet as many cool people as I want to. It all comes from my own effort and what I'm willing to stick through. So when I land in Nepal, I want to do adventure photography. I want to talk to everyone there. I also want to learn more martial arts. So I want to get more into Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. I want to get more into Muay Thai. Muay Thai is basically where it's called the art of the eight limbs or something like that, and you fight using your fists, your kicks, your knees, and your elbows, and that's that's gonna be super exciting. It's gonna be brutal, but I'm really excited for it. And yeah, let's just get into this. So, my favorite entrepreneurs and role models. So I wrote this about 12 days ago, 15 days ago, 13 days ago on August 22nd, 2025. And I decided to talk about my thoughts, my favorite entrepreneurs and role models, stuff like that. Let's get into things. So yeah, I think I iterated this enough, but my favorite role model of all time is Jimmy Chin. After college, he graduated and he just said, okay, I'm gonna just start climbing. He climbed for 3 years, went really dirt broke, and he picked up photography, became really good at photography, and then started to make money from photography. And I think learning about his journey, especially as a Chinese American, and having the parental pressure or societal pressure to conform to, let's say, an engineering route or being a doctor, like pre-professional career paths like that. He kind of went against the grain and said, okay, I just want to do climbing and I want to do photography. And he made it. So I think for me, he's my biggest role model just because we have very much the shared cultural background and the same or very similar career aspiration, if that makes sense. Yeah. And then my second favorite, actually, there's no like second, first, or whatever, but my another favorite role model that I have is Phil Knight, who's the founder of Nike. And I only learned much about him through reading his memoir, Shoe Dog. I highly recommend reading it. It's like a really interesting story of how this guy went to University of Oregon. He did his MBA at Stanford Business School, and he received, I guess, his idea for selling tiger shoes during his travels to Japan and Asia. And for me, reading about his story, he clearly shows, I guess, going against the popular belief of you have to go for an MBA. And for me, this deeply resonates just because coming from a business, coming from an undergrad business background and going to Wharton Business School, there was very much a pressure to go into career paths like consulting, banking, software engineering, quant, careers like that. And when I read Shoe Dog, he mentioned how a lot of his classmates in his MBA class were sort of laughing at him for trying to pursue shoes. They were saying, bro, like, you went to Stanford Business School and you're trying to sell shoes to children. What are you doing with your life? And Phil Knight just said, I believe in running, I love running, and I rather do this and not do consulting and whatnot. And in this journal entry that I shared on Substack, I talk about how at Wharton undergrad you see a lot of people pursuing these careers and they end up burning out and they go back for their MBA program. And this is very, very common across all business schools, across all pre-professional backgrounds. What you often end up seeing is people would recruit really hard during their college sophomore years and they would want to go into investment banking, restructuring, finance, whatever. They get their new grad job. They work in New York. They work at a very prestigious firm like Goldman Sachs, places like that. And they end up working between 60 to 120 hours a week. And what often happens from what I learned about talking to other people and just networking within my school and within the industry is that these people just end up burning out and they don't like their job. They're like saying, "What the heck, man? Like I'm making six figures. I'm making 150K a year, and I want to do something else." So, what a lot of people end up doing is they go back for their MBA, and during this time they're sort of taking a break. They're drinking more of this. In my opinion, they're drinking more of this corporate Kool-Aid, and then afterwards they might re-enter the consulting industry, re-enter the finance industry, or they want to pivot and go into startups, product development, other things like that, or they build their own companies and startups. There's no shame in doing any of these. It's just something that I observed. But from my conversations with many of these people, undergrad and MBA candidate, I think that if not the majority, but at least a good, decent chunk of people are doing things because they're very much risk averse and they're very scared to go against the status quo. So, what I'm thinking is that, like, one example would be someone who goes into consulting fresh after college, goes in there for like 2 to 3 years. Their firm, let's say BCG, sponsors their MBA. They go back for their MBA. They come back to BCG and then work another 4 years. And by the time that they're age 31, they're thinking, oh, now I have saved enough money, I can do whatever I want. But a lot of the times, they're just doing consulting because they're still trying to figure it out. And they go into their MBA program with the intent to figure it out, only to end up thinking, oh, wait, all these other careers seem very risky. I'm age 25, age 27. I'm going to go back to my consulting firm and I'm going to work there for another 2 years and I'll figure it out then. And what ends up happening is that people are just kicking the can, well, like some people are just kicking the can down the road, assuming that they'll figure it out after this 2 year program, after this 4 year program, after this 1 year rotational program. And they often do figure it out early on. They just never follow their interest or they never follow their passion, right? And that is something that I'm very worried about for myself, just because I know currently that my passion is photography and adventure. And this is very much unlike the typical finance consulting route. That is very difficult, to be honest. Like, how do you combine the two together? So, I decided to say, fuck it, I'm gonna just go for whatever I'm passionate in, and I'll figure it out from there. And who knows, like, if things go to shit, then things go to shit. That's fine. It's whatever, right? And in this journal entry, I wrote about how in high school I actually wanted to become an investment banker. And to me, the coolest career was someone like what Carl Icahn did, or Bill Ackman to an extent, of being an activist investor, buying up a bunch of shares in a company, ousting out management and saying, like, I want to run the company like this and we're going to make a lot of money doing things like this way. Or when I read Barbarians at the Gate, I actually read this during college, but I've heard about it just about KKR and how they did these like crazy leverage buyouts. I didn't know what it was really at the time, but that seemed really cool to me as well. And in addition, I've thought about doing quant work. Reading Jim Simon's biography in The Man Who Solved the Market was really cool, especially given how I think they had a 50.05% success rate with their trades of them being profitable because they did so many trades at a very high frequency, very short term. What's the word? Like, they hold it for very short, and then they just sell it back, or they just make the market, whatever. It was just so cool to learn about that and see how people use technology and math and finance and whatever edge that they can to make a lot of money trading markets, right? But when I got to Wharton, I realized that like I had like this grandiose view on what finance is like, but it honestly isn't the case anymore. I'd say maybe I think quant is still very enticing just because it's fun to trade and everything, but hearing about how people say, oh, the investment banking bonuses are low, they're nowhere near their 2008 highs, and hearing about how a private equity associate would have to grind like 110 hours a week and to wait maybe like 15 years or however so many years to have a chance at making partner and then receiving carry and sort of being rewarded for their own investment decisions, like that just seemed way too long, in my opinion, to work so hard for other people to have, let's say, a chance at making partner. Like, that makes no sense to me. Why would you work an unbelievably amount of hours just for an opportunity to do your own thing or to like receive part of the carry? I'm not making this video to like shit on anyone else. It was just like, for me, I'm pretty impatient, and that just didn't make sense to me, especially given what I'm interested in and what I'm, let's say, like what I'm comfortable risking, right? It just didn't make sense to me. It seemed like a very low risk career path with stable income, stable everything, but it was just going to take too long. Yeah. So that's what I realized from meeting with a bunch of people. You know, many people are driven by fear of failure and end up choosing these typical careers for job security and to appease societal pressures. So with societal pressures, we see parents sort of pressuring people to go into different career paths. I've met so many people who are pre-med whose parents are doctors, and they feel like they have to do pre-med. It's kind of sad because they feel trapped, or they feel like they have to meet their parental expectations, even if it's not, even if the parents didn't like say it, it's at least implicitly imposed on them to reach, I don't know, to reach their level. Yeah. Mom, busy right now. Yeah, my mom just asked me to eat dinner, but I will be doing that in a bit. So, yeah. Yeah, why would you want to pursue a career where you work 80 plus hour work weeks and your bonus is nowhere close to where it was in the early 2000s, right? In addition, we see ChatGPT and AI tools sort of disrupting this industry for good, for better or for worse. We don't know exactly, but I think that the entry to get into these industries is way more difficult than it was before, right? And also, from just my, and this is just a hunch that I have, and I read this book called Blue Ocean Strategy, which is a Harvard Business Review book on marketing and how these companies came to dominate in industries where it was very competitive, and they carved out their own industry or their own smaller market after that, right? And Blue Ocean Strategy discusses how companies avoid red oceans where there's a lot of competition and go into blue oceans where there's little competition, and they can basically take over that entire market instantly. And to use this as an analogy for the finance industry, I think that investment banking is very much a red ocean. Everyone has a 4.0 GPA. Everyone is very driven. Everyone is type A, very skilled people. You know, it's, you will be rewarded, but you won't be rewarded as greatly if you were to enter a blue ocean where people are lazy or people don't know anything, or it's not technologically I don't know, like advanced or anything. Like wherever you have an edge, you will not have that edge in the finance industry. Some guy will have, I don't know, a better network than you, or they just know more than you because they grinded harder than you, stuff like that. It, for me, just doesn't seem like a good idea to go into the finance industry just because it is very much a red ocean, right? And this is very much in the general sense. There's, of course, smaller pockets of blue ocean within the finance industry, but I don't want to get into that too much, right? One example is there's currently 4,000 plus private equity firms out there, but only a few generate a lot of money, that being KKR, Apollo Global Management, firms like that. But I bet all these other firms are not doing as well, you know? And we now see a lot of firms trying to, or struggling to raise continuation funds for their LPs. And why is that? Because it's not as sexy anymore, because it's very much saturated, right? And then another person that I look up to is Steve Jobs. Aside from him starting Apple and his whole, aside from him starting Apple and making the iPhone, iPod Touch, all those cool little products, I was very much fascinated by his story of when he was 19 years old. He went to India and became a homeless bum, basically, and attempted to search for enlightenment, right? So he dropped out of college and he read this book called Autobiography of a Yogi. It's a very interesting book. Actually, it's not that interesting. It's just like really long and boring, in my opinion. But he would read this book every year, actually, up until his death. And when he died, he gave every single guest at his funeral a copy of this book. So this book meant a lot to him. And I was very much intrigued, so I decided to read the book for myself. I downloaded the book online as a PDF, and I went through about, I think, 300 of 500 pages into the book just to have a better idea of where. Wait! Sorry about that. Um, yeah. But just to have a better idea of why he decided to go to India, of all places, and what in India would want him to search for enlightenment and stuff like that, right? So when I read the book, it was very much. It discusses a lot of supernatural stuff, like, I don't know, magical healing properties, things like that you would often hear about in supernatural books or religious texts, stuff like that. And I just thought it was really interesting because the culture of India, as described in that book, is very much the opposite of the culture that I had to go through while in college. It's honestly a direct contrast, right? Um, the book very much valued spirituality, being one with yourself, you know, trying to enlighten yourself, trying to meditate, heal yourself, and becoming one with God, essentially. While when we go, while during my time at Wharton, it's very much, oh, can you secure that 100K plus job after college? And can you go for your MBA? Can you make X amount of money and make your alma mater, your alma mater look good? You know, can you generate enough money to afford that nice apartment or to do whatever, whatever, whatever? It's very much a materialistic, wealth-driven culture, I'd say, at Wharton sometimes. And that's not to say that Wharton culture is bad and that this Eastern culture, as described in the Autobiography of Yogi, is good. There's no good or bad. I don't want to criticize one way of living over the other, but to me, the culture in Autobiography of a Yogi is so opposite that I have to immerse myself into it. Like, I honestly think that many of the world's greatest people um, have combined various schools of thought and have like carved out their own personal philosophy. And I think by following a similar path as Steve Jobs during my time in Nepal in 10 days, I will then figure it out for myself as well. Like, how much money or how much materialism should I value compared to personal enlightenment and spirituality? There's like, what's the balance there? You know, is spirituality a real thing or is it bullshit? Who knows? Like, I don't know that at all. So I'm gonna go there and figure it out. And instead of Hinduism, I'll be exploring Buddhism. I think they're somewhat similar. Obviously, they're not fully similar, but uh, I think it'll be very eye opening to say the least. And I'm excited to see how I'll change in the future. Right. Another person I look up to is Richard Branson. I haven't really read into him at that much, but just reading about his story was just really inspiring because he didn't do well in school, and I didn't do well in college. I graduated with like a 3.0 GPA, but I did take very difficult classes. I did study finance and computer science, and I did like occupy myself with a lot of other difficult things, you know, such as clubs, extracurriculars, working out, a job as well. So it's just like a lot for me. But reading about Richard Branson's story of how he overcame academic adversity and still managed to become successful just made me realize how honestly like grades and GPA doesn't matter that much in life. No, like it matters because it indicates hard work ethic and everything else, but it's not the end all be all, right? And yeah, I think this has just been a crazy brain dump of a video. Um, but yeah, thank you for watching. It's 10 days out till Nepal. I'm pretty excited. I'll be exploring Buddhism, spirituality, adventure photography, Muay Thai, Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, making a bunch of friends, making a bunch of connections, mountaineering. Um, and yeah, I'm pretty excited. So thank you for watching the video. Have a good rest of your day. And yeah, I'll keep you guys updated. Peace.